Hello my friends, welcome to Scugog Public Library. My name is Kyle and I am here today to show you not one, but two really awesome STEAM projects that you can make at home using this STEAM Take and Make Activity Kit from Scugog Public Library. Today's projects are designed to make us think about engineering and the science behind aerodynamics. So let's get right to it. Let's open up our Take and Make activity kits and let's see what materials we have to work with. Okay, so in your kits today you should find 3 brightly colored pieces of paper, each with a stencil or design on them, and you will also find 3 pieces of plain white paper, each with a stencil or a design on them. Now you will also find 2 rubber bands that we will use and this paper straw as well. Now there are a few items from home that you will need to supply in order to complete these projects. For this project, you will need to supply a pair of scissors to cut things with. You will need to supply some invisible tape, or sometimes this is called scotch tape. And you will also need to supply some colorful pencil crayons and markers for when we get a little bit creative and colorful later on. Excellent. Now that our workstations are set up, we are just about ready to start our first project. Now you could probably tell from the materials that were included in your kit that today we're going to be making some kind of a paper airplane. Well, these are not your average paper airplanes that we're making. No way. These are flying machines powered by science. For our first project, we are going to use one of the 3 colorful pieces of paper that I supplied you in your kit. Now we're only going to use one piece of paper, but I thought it would be nice if I gave you a few different colors to choose from for this project. I'm going to go with my orange piece of paper as an example, and when I look at it, I can see right away that there are some solid lines on this piece of paper, and then there are some dotted lines on this piece of paper. I'm going to take my scissors, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the rectangular outline of this piece of paper out. I'm just going to be very careful to stay along the solid lines when I do this cutting. And there we go. We've cut out the rectangular outline on our template. Okay, so now for the next step, I'm going to use my scissors again, and I'm just going to put a nice slice down the other solid lines, just like that. And I see another one right here. And I see another one right here. Just like that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to completely change the properties of this flat piece of paper by folding it along the dotted lines. Watch this. Wherever there's a dotted line, I am going to fold the piece of paper so that it takes on the shape of something completely different. I am going to fold these pieces this way, and then again in the opposite direction, and then I'm going to do the same for the other piece. Just like that. And what we should be left with is something that looks like it could be a helicopter. Now that we have finished making all of our folds and all of our corners are nice and precise, we are ready to test our paper helicopter. Watch this. For our second project, we're going to use all the other pieces that were left inside of your Take and Make kit. So that means we're going to use the paper straw, the rubber bands, and then the 3 pieces of plain white paper. Now to get us started, I'm just going to take the straw and the rubber bands and put them aside, and I'm going to take each of my pieces of paper and I'm going to cut the outlines of these shapes out. Now I'm going to be very careful to stay close to the solid lines and keep the shapes that are on the paper. Here we go. For this next step, I am going to take this piece, and I'm just going to move the other ones out of the way for now, so that I'm going to line them up so that it looks kind of like an airplane already. Look at that. Now I'm just going to take my paper straw, and I'm going to the best of my ability, line up the tail so that it is right on the dotted line. See that there? I'm going to put my straw over top of the dotted line. And then I'm going to take my invisible tape and get a nice piece of tape there, and I'm going to secure the straw to the tailpiece of my airplane. Just like that. Now you have to be very careful to get the straw lined up with the dotted lines, okay? So with this larger wing piece, I'm just going to do the exact same thing, but I'm going to use 2 pieces of tape to secure it this time. So here's my first piece. I'm being very careful to line the straw up with the dotted lines, just like that. And here is my second piece. And this one should go on a little bit easier because the other part is already taped down. There we go. There we are. You should have something that looks a little bit like this. Next, I'm going to take the matching wing piece, the big one here, and I am going to line it up on my straw as well, but instead of taping it to the straw, this time I'm going to very carefully take a piece of tape and tape it to the edges of the airplane. Watch this. Very careful when I do this. I'll just fold that over like that. And now I'm going to go all the way around the outside of my wings using my tape and just making sure that it's nice and secure. There we go. So I ended up using 6 pieces of tape to secure my wings together. I used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. For the next step, we are going to finish off the tailpiece of our airplane by folding this funny looking piece of paper in half. We're just going to make sure that the points line up nicely like that. And then even more carefully, we're going to fold in the opposite direction this piece right here so that it is roughly halfway up the tailpiece. And we'll do that again on the other side, just like that. And the reason we're doing this is as we fold it, it's going to match the outline of the tailpiece that we've already taped down. So we're just going to line those up now, and using our tape, much in the same way that we did the larger wings before, we're just going to secure the tailpiece into place. Watch this. And there we go. The final step of engineering our flyer involves these 2 rubber bands. Now these rubber bands are going to act as a counterweight to the wings, and we're going to place the rubber bands at the very tip of our flying machine. Now to do this, we're going to take one of the rubber bands and we're just going to place it over, and we're going to twist and then wrap it around. Twist and wrap it around. Twist and wrap it just like that. And then we're going to do the exact same thing with the second rubber band. We're just going to wrap it around and twist, wrap it around and twist. Now our paper flyer is almost 100% complete. However, you know that I always like to add a little design element to my STEAM projects, so take a look what I've done with my pencil crayons and markers. I've added some really bright colors to my paper flyer. I've added some orange and yellow and red, which matches the red straw, and the rubber bands that I put on the tip of my flyer, and it looks like this thing is going to fly fast. Now, you may find that the first time you go to use your paper airplane, that it doesn't necessarily fly properly, and that is normal. That is totally okay, because a big part of engineering is testing things to make sure that they work properly. So, you may have to take some time to troubleshoot why your airplane isn't working. For example, if you find that your airplane is just taking sharp turns right into the ground, then take a look at the tail at the back of your airplane and make sure that it is on nice and straight and that it lines up with the wings. Now, what if your airplane just goes straight into a dive bomb into the ground? Well, that might mean that you have too much weight on the very tip of the airplane. So try removing or even adding some rubber bands to just balance the weight a little bit better. The best place to test your airplane is outside, where there's lots of room to make mistakes. So why not head outside right now and give your paper flyer a good test run and see what improvements you can make to help it fly better. Well, my friends, thank you for joining me today. I hope that our helicopter and flyer project has made you think about paper and aerodynamics in a slightly different way. And I hope that the projects we did today inspire you to spread your wings and take flight. See you next time.